Hey there, Uncle Unit. I'm a big fan of your channel. Been listening for a couple years now, and your videos along with the true crime podcasts I listen to make the long hauls across country a little more bearable. There was a story in one of your recent videos about a woman who was attacked on her prom night. A man wearing a rain poncho came at her with a knife while she was in the restroom, and it reminded me of this experience I had on the road back in 2002. And those times, I was running hauls out of Dallas down to Houston, and then back up through the Panhandle. I've been driving semi since I was in my early 20s. I figured I knew every stretch of I-35, every rest area, every way station like the back of my hand. You get into a rhythm out there. CB chatter, coffee from the truck stops, watching the miles tick by under the open Texas skies, bugs on the windshield, maybe the occasional blowout. But not much else. That night I was southbound on US 281, somewhere between Wichita Falls and Abilene. The only thing out that way is shrub bush and oil pumps. Around 2 a.m., my rig was heavy enough that the scales were calling me in at this little way station off the highway. It was basically just a concrete pad with a scale house, with one sleepy attendant inside. I pulled up, weighed in quick, no ticket. Just the usual paperwork. Then I was waved through. I needed to hit the head real quick. Too much coffee. So I parked my rig in the pull-through, killed the engine, and walked over to the restrooms. The place was dead quiet, except for the crickets and the weeds. The door creaked open. Call me crazy, but something didn't feel right about this place, and it wasn't just the smell of bleach and old piss. I felt like I wasn't alone in there. The only other time I've felt this way was when I had my first encounter with a lot lizard. Look that up if you don't know. I stepped up to the urinal and started doing my business. That's when I heard it. Soft click of the latch behind me. One of the stall doors started opening. Very slowly. Like whoever was in there didn't want me to notice right away. I glanced over my shoulder to see the stall door ajar. I finished and zipped back up. When I turned around, I saw someone inside the stall, peering out at me. "What's your problem?" The stall door then opened fully, and out stepped a man wearing a black hoodie pulled down low, hiding most of his face. In his hands, he held an axe. It was one of those full-sized red fire axes. He then raised it over his head and charged at me. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. My instincts took over, and I bolted for the door, almost tripping over my own boots. I burst outside and headed straight for the scale house. The attendant must have saw me approaching, because he came out before I even got there. "What the hell?" he shouted. I pointed back at the restroom. "In there. There's some fucking lunatic with an axe. Are you fucking with me? 'Cause they'll revoke your CDL if this is a joke." "No, I'm not fucking with you, asshole. Go call the police." The attendant called it in and offered me a chair. I made sure to apologize for calling him an asshole after he got off the phone. The state troopers rolled up quick, lights flashing. They searched the entire station and the brush off the highway. They even checked under my trailer, like the guy might have been hiding there. They found nothing. My attacker vanished, like smoke. There were no surveillance cameras at this location, but there was drug paraphernalia found in the bathroom stall he came out of. The troopers took my statement, said that they would look into local transients. But out there, in rural Texas, middle of nowhere, good luck. I sat in my cab until dawn, engine running, doors locked, shaking. I kept replaying it over and over in my head. This guy was doing drugs in the bathroom stall, and he attacked me with an axe when he heard me come in. If that guy working at the scale house had come in and wasn't paying attention, he might have had that axe get buried into his head. I never heard another word from the troopers, so I assume they never caught the guy. I've seen a lot of shit on the road over the years, been in arguments with hitchhikers. I've never picked one up, but sometimes they just like to invite themselves into the cab. I've seen 18-wheelers flip over, and have even had my truck buried in an avalanche in Colorado, but nothing puts the fear in you like seeing some deranged hooded man coming after you with an axe. To this day, I try to avoid going to way station restrooms alone at night if possible. If it's a simple drain, I just find the nearest bush. But if I have to take the Browns to the Super Bowl, I have no choice. In 1993, I was working for a truck rental company. Think U-Haul, but local to Georgia. We only had 3 locations: Griffin, Atlanta, and Savannah. I would often have to move box trucks from one location to another. Easy money, short runs, home most nights. That particular evening, I had to take a 24-foot box truck from the Griffin location up to the Atlanta depot. My boss told me, "You should take the back roads to avoid traffic. We're on a time crunch with this one." According to traffic reports, there was something going on in the city that night that caused the interstates to be backed up. The truck was assigned to be rented out the very next morning, which was unusual. But I remember that things were a bit hectic around this time because we were competing with the corporate chains that were looking to set up shop in our territories. We fought the good fight, but ended up being absorbed by 1999. Anyways, it was late fall, already dark by 7 p.m. I got turned around somewhere off a GA 155. The roads became all twisty, no street lights, thick pines on both sides. I pulled over on the gravel next to a big stretch of woods to check the maps. This was long before the GPS smartphone days. As I was examining the map, something hit the hood of the truck like a gunshot. I jumped and looked out. I saw nothing at first. Then a brick sailed right through the passenger window, glass exploding inward, showering me. I looked up again. There was someone in the trees, maybe about 20 feet off the road, wearing a white porcelain mask, like those theater masks, but with no expression. He didn't say a word, and he had another brick ready to go, and cocked back his arm for another throw. As I put the truck back in the drive, a second masked figure appeared outside the broken window, hanging off the truck's frame. I floored it, tires spinning. As the truck went forward, the masked man tried opening the passenger door. I turned hard, going back in the opposite direction. The masked man yelled as I sent him tumbling into a ditch. I gunned it back down the way I came, taking another look into my rearview mirror one last time. There were now several figures standing in the road, 4, maybe 5, shoulder to shoulder, like statues, watching as I sped away. I didn't stop until I made it back to the highway, pulled into the first gas station I came across, glass crunching under my boots when I got out to talk to the clerk about calling the police. I told them everything, the masks, the brick being thrown, which was still in my cab, and the one who tried opening the door while I was speeding off. They sent units out, but of course, by the time they got back to that stretch of road, there was nothing there. Those woods were too thick to search at night. The cops took my report and said it sounded like kids playing a prank, or maybe a robbery setup gone wrong. That could be accurate for all I know, but something tells me there was something else going on out there. Multiple people wearing those blank porcelain masks. It felt coordinated, like they were waiting for someone to pull over. My boss was pissed about the damage to the truck, but was glad I was okay. I always wondered if it was some kind of cult back in those woods. Georgia had weird groups like that in the 90s, with satanic rituals and whatnot. Maybe they saw my headlights and decided that I was the offering for that night. Or maybe it was just bored locals messing with drivers. Either way, I never took the back roads again after that. And if I ever got turned around somewhere, I would pull over at a well-lit gas station or a truck stop to study the maps or ask for directions. I've been driving trucks for around 30 years. I've been all over the road since the late 90s, running Midwest routes mostly. Chicago to Detroit, Indy to Cleveland. You get the idea. These areas are mostly long, boring highways. I have the same routine every stop. Weigh in if needed, grab some food, check the tires, then hit the road. Nothing fancy, nothing scary. But one night around 2005, the routine was disrupted. I was somewhere off I-95 near Jackson, Michigan, hauling auto parts northbound. It was around 8 p.m. My stomach was growling after a long day on the road. I pulled into this little truck stop outside of Jackson. There was a couple of other rigs parked. I fueled up, weighed in, then parked in the back lot near the diner. I always make sure to lock the cab whenever I leave. I walked in the diner for a hot plate and a cup of coffee. The place was half empty. The waitress was chatting with some regulars. I just sat at the counter, checking my route maps. GPS wasn't fully integrated at this time, and I would say I was in there for around 45 minutes. I walked back out, unlocked my door, climbed in, and fired up the engine. Everything seemed normal. Sleeper curtain was half drawn like I had left it, and I eased out of the lot, merging onto the highway ramp, and got up to speed. I was about half a mile down the road when blue lights were flashing in my mirrors. A state trooper pulled me over. I had no idea why. I wasn't speeding, and my lights were good. I eased to the shoulder and killed the engine. The trooper walks up, flashlight in hand. "Good evening, sir. Is there someone with you?" I was confused by the question. No, officer. It's just me." That's when I heard it. From directly behind me, a soft whisper. Female voice, raspy and low. "Don't tell him I'm back here." I froze. My heart drops to my stomach, and my skin goes cold. I glanced in the rearview mirror. Nothing was visible with a curtain, but I knew someone was back there. I didn't say a word at first. I just stared straight ahead, and the trooper notices my face change. "Is everything all right?" "No, there's someone right behind me." He steps back with one hand on his holster. "Okay, I need you to step down from the vehicle." I open the door and climb down. The trooper draws his sidearm and points it at the cab. "Whoever is in there, come out slowly. Hands where I can see him." The curtain parts, and a woman climbs out. She was in her mid-30s, stringy hair, track marks on her arms. She came out with her hands up, eyes wide. She looked like your typical homeless drug addict, thin, jittery. I'm surprised I didn't smell anything while I was in there. The trooper cuffs her right there on the shoulder and radios it in. I'm standing off to the side, staring at my own truck like it's a stranger. They search her. No weapon, just a small bag with some clothes and a meth pipe, of course. She doesn't say much, mumbles something about being cold and needing a ride. The trooper asked her how she got in, and she shrugs. "The door was unlocked." But that was a lie. Someone saw her messing with the passenger side door while I was inside the diner. She slipped in and hid in the sleeper compartment. Thankfully for me, whoever saw her called the police. They took her away in the cruiser. A couple of weeks later, I got a call from a detective following up on the case. It turns out she was wanted for questioning in connection to a homicide that happened down in Jackson. Some guy was stabbed in a motel room a few days earlier. Her prints were found at the scene. She wasn't charged with a murder, but they were holding her because she knew something about what happened. She had a history, priors for theft, drugs, and prostitution, nothing violent. After the call, I sat in my motel room, staring up at the ceiling. She was right behind me the whole drive from the lot. She could have done anything. Grabbed the wheel, put a knife to my throat, anything. and I wouldn't have been able to stop it. Moving forward, I always checked the cab after every stop, opening the sleeper curtain, shining a light in the back, under the bunk, behind the seats, even if my cab was locked, and even if it's daytime. No exceptions. My name is Earl McTavish. I'm Canadian, and I would appreciate it if you didn't say A. Why would you write that down if you didn't want me to say it? I've been hauling freight up and down the Manitoba roads for about 5 years now. I'm not really the type who scares easy. Give me a full tank of gas, a thermos, and a clear highway, and I'm a happy camper. I'll hook in the Bluetooth and listen to some podcasts to pass the time. I've never been one to believe in cryptids, ghost stories, or anything supernatural, but after what happened to me last week, I've changed my tune. I was heading north out of Winnipeg. It was one of those pitch-black prairie nights. I've been driving since 4 in the morning. My tank was full, but I was gassed. My eyes were becoming heavy. Shoulders kept locking up. I knew I had to pull over when the road started playing tricks on me. I would say this was around 2:30 a.m. I spotted an old blue sign for a decommissioned rest stop just north of St. Andrews. That place had been shut down for years. Had a real creepy vibe, with its boarded up windows, cracked asphalt, weeds pushing up through everything. I thought better to pull in there to catch a quick nap, rather than end up causing a pileup on the highway. So I eased my rig down the ramp and parked in the wide open parking lot. Not a minute later, I crawled into the back bunk and passed out. About 3 hours later, I woke up. The sun was coming up, but it was still dark and quiet. And I mean, real quiet. I didn't even hear the natural sounds of the forest. It was very eerie out here. I got out of my cab and wanted to stretch my legs for a bit. So I decided to walk around the old rest stop building and get the blood flowing. I've driven by this place a couple times, and I've always wondered what it looked like on the inside. The entry door was already halfway open, and just kinda swinging there back and forth. I grabbed my big Maglite and wandered over. The inside smelled like mold and something sharp, like copper. I swept the light around. Some old vending machines, tipped over benches, wallpaper peeling off the walls. It looked like how you would expect it to. I kept advancing further, past the front desk, into a big open area that looked like it was a lounge area once upon a time. That's when I heard a voice. "Help me, please. Somebody help me." I swung the flashlight toward the far corner. What I saw damn near made my heart stop on the spot. I don't know what the hell I was looking at, but it was tall, 9 or 10 feet, easily. It had gray skin pulled tight over muscle and bone, like it had been crudely sewn together. Picture 3 torsos stitched into each other side by side, like some kind of science experiment. It had multiple heads, 3 on top, and others embedded into its side. Dead eyes staring at me, mouths hanging open. There was one head right in the middle that kind of looked like a mutated bullfrog with rows of sharp teeth. I assumed one of its heads was whispering in that broken, desperate voice. "Please, it still hurts. Help me." Then, what looked like a woman's head on the left suddenly jerked up, her eyes locked right on mine, and she screamed. I couldn't move. I was floored by what I was seeing. Some kind of twisted abomination. The middle head then disappeared into its body as it got down on all fours. As it did, the faces on its side moaned in agony. It was the most disturbing thing I had ever seen in my life. The creature's flesh began rippling across its body, like something underneath was trying to push its way out. That finally kicked me into gear. I turned and ran like hell, boots pounding on the broken tiles, flashlight bouncing everywhere. I could still hear those wails and moans behind me. I burst out the front door and nearly ate dirt as I sprinted back to my truck. I didn't even close the cab door all the way. I just fired up the engine, slammed it into gear, and got the hell out of there. Gravel flying, tires spinning. I didn't let off the throttle until I was back on Highway 9, and that rest stop was long gone. Later, when my hands finally stopped shaking, I started thinking about all the people who have gone missing up and down that stretch of highway over the years. A father and son back in 2008. Their car found parked at an old pull-off, doors wide open. No sign of them. Or the young woman cyclist in 2014 who disappeared somewhere between Selkirk and Winnipeg. And those 3 loggers back in 2019. Truck left running, one boot lying on the grass, like they had got yanked right out of it. All of them real cases, never solved. I keep wondering, did all those missing people end up at that old rest stop? Did that thing I saw there collect them somehow? I don't know. A part of me is still coping. Maybe it was just a vivid nightmare I had while I was sleeping in my truck. Because if that thing is real, I can't even stomach the thought of someone being trapped inside of it, still begging for help. All I know is that I will never pull into that abandoned rest stop again. My routes will undoubtedly take me past there at some point, but I'll be sure to keep on rolling, no matter how tired I am.